Hey guys, this is Coach Lowe, and we're going to talk about 3-6 for contextual geometry, talking about Chapter 3, Section 6, and it's on congruent angles. Definitions that you need to put in your notebook. Definition of congruent angles. Two angles are congruent if and only if they have the same degree measure. So congruent angles, and congruent means equal in measure. So they will be the same measure. So if we say angle 2 is congruent to angle 3, that means they are equal in measure. Definition of vertical angles. Let's see if I can get a line drawn here. Vertical angles, or two angles, are vertical if and only if they are two non-adjacent angles formed by a pair of intersecting lines. So here I have a pair of intersecting lines, and angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles. So you can see if I trace 1 and 3, they are non-adjacent. They do not share a side. I did not color over a side twice. Let me get a different color here so you can actually see that. I don't have a red and a blue side on for number 1, angle number 1, there's no red and blue side, and for angle number 3, there's no red and blue side. So those are non-adjacent angles. Now, the next theorem deals with this picture. Vertical angles are congruent, which means angle 1 would be congruent to angle 3, and angle 4 would be congruent to angle 2. That also tells you that the measure of angle 1 equals the measure of angle 3 from our definition here of congruent angles. And the measure of angle 4 is equal to the measure of angle 2. So if I know the measure of one angle, I could actually find the measure of all of them, because we also are dealing with linear pairs here. All right, theorem 3-2. If two angles are congruent, then their complements are congruent. So whatever the number is that would add to make it 90, those are congruent. And then the same thing for supplements. If two angles are congruent, then their supplements are congruent. All right, a few more here. I told you there were a lot of theorems. I wasn't playing. Theorem 3-4, if two angles are complementary to the same angle, they're congruent. And if two angles are supplementary to the same angle, they have equal measure, they are congruent. 3-6, if two angles are congruent and supplementary, then each is a right angle. So if two angles are equal to each other and they add to be 180 degrees, they have to be 90-degree angles. 90 plus 90 is 180. There's no choice. And all right angles are congruent, which means all right angles are equal in measure. All right, so let's try 6 practice problems, and then we'll pick it up in class. All right, identify each pair of angles in exercises 1-4 as adjacent, vertical, complementary, supplementary, and or as a linear pair. All right, angle number 1, I'll trace it with blue, and angle number 2, I will trace it in green. So first of all, the first thing I'm checking, are they adjacent? So do they share a common side and a vertex? The answer is yes. So I know these two angles are adjacent angles. They are not vertical angles. Next question, are they complementary? Do I know that these two angles add to be 90 degrees? Well, no, it's actually over 90. And they aren't supplementary either, because to be supplementary, this would have to be coming out this direction for the back side of angle number 1. So that's not happening. So that's it. They're just adjacent angles. All right, let's move on to number 2. Number 2 says compare angle 1 and angle 4. So there's angle 1, and here's angle 4. And they are vertical angles, so no common side. They don't have any adjacent sides. They're not adjacent angles, and they share a vertex. I have two lines that intersect. So let's write down vertical angles. Yay. Okay, so number 3. Angles 3 and 4. So there's angle 3. Let me get a different color. That's not very good. Angle 3 and angle 4. All right, so also, I don't know if you saw, but there's a little mark down here in the corner. Notice. Cool. That little mark means 90 degrees. So angle 3 and angle 4 are adjacent angles. They have a common side. You can back up the video if you need to see the two different colors. And they add to be 90 degrees, which makes them complementary. Angle 1 and angle 5. So let's look at angle 1 and angle 5. So I have adjacent angles. They share a side. So I'm going to go ahead and write down adjacent. I don't know where that N came from, and adjacent over there. Talking and writing probably, I guess. So adjacent. And let's see, do the back side of these angles, so the non-adjacent side, not the side that has purple and green, but the back side of it, are those opposite rays? If the answer is yes, then we're dealing with a linear pair. And the answer is yes. Those adjacent rays, or I mean opposite rays, definitely form a line there. All right, let's finish up here. Find X, Y, and Z. Well, there are a couple of things going on here. First of all, these guys are vertical angles. Do you guys see that? So I have this angle, and I didn't trace over anything. Those guys are vertical angles. So I know that Y is 51. Yay. All right, so now let's see if we can find one of the other two. Well, we know that these two guys form a linear pair. Do you see this adjacent, these two adjacent angles? The common side and then the back side forms a line, opposite rays. So I know that 51 plus something has to be equal to 180. So 51 plus something has to be 180. And to solve for X, I subtract 51 from both sides, and X is 129. All right, if X is 129, I see that Z is a vertical angle with X. So Z is also 129. All right, last one, guys. All right, so find X and Y. If CBD and FDG are congruent. FDG are congruent. So I have this one and this one. Those are equal in measure. So those are 63 degrees. So that makes this one 63. And so y equals 63, but look at x. How is x related to y? All right, well, let me draw these lines that go through here. So there's a line that helps form it, and there's a line. So I have intersecting lines. These two angles do not have any sides in common, so they're vertical angles, and we know vertical angles are equal in measure, which means if y is 63, then x is 63. All right, guys, I will see you soon. This is Coach Lowe, and I'm out.